I really liked that Tim Walz kept snapping around because that told me, oh, dude just said something. And then he'd start writing stuff down. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but towards the end of the debate, Tim Walz is at the end of his page. Tim Walz has written down so many notes on what Jd Vance is saying that he's now writing on the bottom of the paper. When we're talking about a person that's going to potentially run the country, as a person that's a leader, as a person that hires people, as a person that manages people and has done so for 20 years, I can tell you right now, that's the person I want to hire. That is what I liked about what Tim Walz did. I thought even though it looks very amateur to certain people, to me, it spoke of a person that wanted to win the debate. It spoke to me of a person that wanted to actually do well, that didn't want to gaslight people, didn't want to lie to people. He just wanted to address whatever claims Jd Vance was making, and that's where I thought he did really, really well. Let's watch some of the highlights, kind of discuss it a little bit, and then we'll get into some of the more fun stuff.
Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris...
Said that right there. That's it. Like, for me, if you're an undecided voter, that should be it for you right there. Him not answering that question, that was the knockout blow. Like, this was a 5-round championship fight that could have went to the scorecards really close. It was either 2-3 this way or 3-2 that way. And Tim Walz, with that question to end this debate, that's the win. That's taking home the belt. That was, in my opinion, his most solid moment. He did a great job with that.
Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning,
Sweet, I'll check it out, Tyler.
non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020.
You want to know the craziest thing about him doing this is I've now seen Donald Trump repeating this a bunch of times on X and on Truth Social. This is one of those things where it's a look over here tactic. So because it's it's a weird segue, right? Let's talk about censorship. Let's talk about energy instead. Because they know exactly what their base cares about. Their base is super afraid that they're going to have freedom of speech taken away from them because they don't actually understand what the First Amendment is. They don't understand, like so many people. I mean, people on the left also don't understand what the First Amendment means. People on the left and right both don't know what the First Amendment means. It does not mean that you have a right to say whatever the hell you want. It does not mean that you can't be censored. What it means is the government is not allowed to create a law or institution to be able to limit your right to do so. And up to this point, the government has not done that. You cannot scream fire in a packed theater. You cannot tell somebody that you are going to murder them. There's a lot of things you can't say.
For you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech.
And to be honest, he's correct. There is no First Amendment right to misinformation. Not when it's being discussed on YouTube, not when it's being discussed on Facebook or X or any private company's platform. I know that there's some conservatives out there with the butthole just tightening up right now. No, it's a fucking public square. Shut the fuck up. It's not a public square. It's a private organization. YouTube has every right to ban me, to take down my channel, to demonetize me, whatever the fuck they want. And it could be over me cursing. It could be over me saying that I think that Joe Biden's a good president. That's their choice. It's not limiting my free speech because I can walk right the fuck outside and spread all the misinformation I want because there's no law that says I can't walk over to my neighbor's house and sit down and say, I think that this isn't real or that this didn't happen. There's no law against that. And there's no law that says you can't say it on social media either. When a social media company takes down your post, that's their choice. Their choice. The misinformation on a platform can be taken down. You have no right to spread that on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Rumble, on YouTube, anywhere.
The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together after.
And here's the problem is really the issue of what he's saying is he's trying to get to the crux of it, is to say we're allowed to spread misinformation that the election was stolen. We're allowed to undermine democracy by telling you guys that, yeah, you might have been okay with the results, but hey, we weren't. No, that is a problem. That is an issue. If you can prove that the election was stolen, then prove it. Take it to the courts. Do it where it's supposed to do it. Guess what? You couldn't do that. You couldn't prove that the election was stolen. Your own people that Donald Trump paid himself, that had nothing to do with the government, proved that it wasn't stolen. And at this point, all you're literally doing is making up shit because there's a bunch of gullible, stupid people that are willing to believe you. And as long as those people exist, people like Jd Vance, Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Mike Pillow, they will continue to press for the right to be able to speak the bullshit that they speak, and they will hide it behind defending your First Amendment rights. It's bullshit.
Afterwards.
You can't.
Let's come
They
together.
took down Adam.
Afterwards.
What was Adam
Can't yell
doing?
fire in a crowded theater.
He's probably
That's
playing
the
like
test. That's the
CBS or
Supreme
something
Court
like
test.
that.
Tim,
That's what I'm
fire
doing.
in a crowded theater. You guys wanted
It'll
to
happen
kick
to me,
people
too.
off of Facebook
It has happened
for
to me
saying
before.
that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does
That's
have the
not
floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing
Yeah,
the
exactly,
policies of the
Devious.
government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for one.
Well, and exactly, Devious. Devious says, Vance crying about censorship when Donnie was threatening Facebook with repealing Section 230 protections. That's the other hypocrisy, right? Like, it seems like the people on the MAGA side of the spectrum have, like, the shortest of memories, because they forget that Donald Trump has literally threatened to jail his media opponents. He has literally threatened to sue. What did he say about ABC? He said, I think they should be investigated for their part in his debate that he lost. Yeah, this is the funniest part about all of this, is all of these motherfuckers are straight up free speech absolutionists. I love when I hear people say that dumb shit. I'm a free speech absolutionist. No, you're not. No, you're not. You are a person that likes it when other people, when celebrities say the things you like. When your friends say the things you like, when the political commentators say the things you like, you're a free speech absolutionist. When people start saying shit you don't like, all of a sudden you're saying things like they should be investigated. Their stuff should be taken down. I love when people say that nowadays. God damn.
That is criticizing
do
the
your own
policies of the
research,
government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to
Please.
respond to you.
Yeah, well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is
Exactly.
I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this, I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate.
100%.
If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear? And
Exactly,
not just the
Devious.
advice
Yeah, that's what I'm
he
saying.
wants to hear.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open, and sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record, but most importantly, Donald Trump delivered.
Dude, even when Donald Trump's not there to fucking redirect and deflect, Jd Vance is. That's like the craziness of this answer. As I said it last night, and I'll say it again. The easiest answer here for Jd Vance is to say something along the lines of, you know, hey, I disagree with a lot of the stuff that he was doing, but you know what? At the end of the day, I think he's like the best candidate for the Republicans, and you know, sure, we disagree on a lot of things, but I think that I can actually balance out the things that he does that I disagree with. But he can't do that because MAGA will eat him alive. Donald Trump will eat him alive. So instead, what does he do? He goes, it wasn't Donald Trump's fault that these things happened. It was Congress's fault. It wasn't Donald Trump's fault that these things happened. It was all the mean media and the things that they said about him. It's not Donald Trump's fault that he said that you should inject disinfectant. That's anybody else's fault. That's somebody else's fault. It's not Donald Trump's fault that he was convicted of 34 felonies. That's the New York State judge's fault. It's not Donald Trump's fault that he was held liable for sexual abuse of E. Jean Carroll. That's also a judge's fault. Nothing is ever Donald Trump's fault. Even my criticism of Donald Trump wasn't Donald Trump's fault. They're the biggest cucks in the world, dude. What's happening, Junior? What's happening, Rocket?
For the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay.
Rocket, you are trying real hard
for normal Americans
to tie probably the nicest dude on earth to Dick Cheney.
Be able to deliver on. And yeah,
I actually respect you for that.
When you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it.
You said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year.
Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those.
You hear that? That's a good answer. It's difficult. Like I have kids, right? And I sit with my kids and I've tried to teach them. I tell them all the time, on this other side of pain is glory, right? Like being honest is a really big thing, right? Like because the more you're honest, the more you don't have to answer questions like this. The more that you don't have to worry. You know, it's what's the saying, the cliche? It's like, oh, the web we weave when first we learn to deceive. You know, like I learned when I was really young because I was from a really, really poor area, right? And Redon's gonna have a laugh at this. But I would tell the people in my neighborhood that my dad was rich, right? Like that didn't make any sense. But to like a 10-year-old that lived in like fucking poverty-stricken ghetto that's like, you know, like no one around me had anything, you know, I wanted to like elevate myself. So as like a 10-year-old, I'd say things like, you know, oh, my dad's actually really rich. And like, you know, because I'd come up and I'd see my dad, like, I met my dad like for reals, like when I was like 12 or 13. And, you know, and I don't mean met him. I knew who he was. But I mean, we lived together for the first like real time after he left when I was a real small child, when I was 12 or 13 years old. And I would come back to where I grew up, and one time I brought a bike with me, and it was a shitty bike. It was like a Walmart bike, but I wanted everybody to like think I was somebody I wasn't, because I was fucking like 12, 13 years old at that time, and I was like, dude, somebody like you guys should love me. You guys think I'm cool. So I was like, this bike it's a Predator. It's worth like $350. And people were like, word? And I was like, yeah, dude, it's like, you've never seen a bike like this, huh? And they're like, no, I haven't. And it was kind of funny because it had this rim that had these little bubbles that went around the inside, so it made it look like it was kind of high class. And you know what ended up happening? Someone stole my goddamn bike. You know why? Because it doesn't pay. Honesty is the best policy. And what he's trying to do here is to say, hey, I said some dumb shit. Even me like sitting here saying this right now, that's not easy. I don't want people to even like think that I'm dishonest. I don't want people to like to question the shit I say, that I'm not like giving it to you with my full chest, that I believe the things I believe. But I know it's more important to admit that you make a mistake. It's more important to say to people, I get it. I understand why you might be pissed off at me about that. It was the wrong thing to do. And sometimes I talk a little too much shit and I exaggerate things just like any other human being does. And I try to teach my kids that on the other side of pain is glory. That once you say to yourself, like, I'm just going to admit this, I'm going to tell these people, you know what, I fucking lied about that. I'm really sorry about that. I apologize. you feel this like feeling of like, all right, now I can be myself now. I don't have to live this life. I 100% support Tim Walz using his words to say I fucked up and then using his actions to prove he understands. That's being human.
But being there, the impact
it might have been a Schwinn predator
in my life. I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case.
Do you remember
that
that bike
Donald
readout?
Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID, and I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris.
Did you guys see that report? I think it came out today. It's something I've already been saying for a long time, but they talked about like how the deportation cost would be hundreds of billions of dollars. It would need internment camps to detain these people. Like the amount of damage that mass deportations would do to the economy is insane. And the fact that 54% of people agree with mass deportations is fucking insane. I'm all for strengthening the border. I'm all for helping people become citizens that want to become citizens in a much more smoother, efficient way. But mass deportations are going to cost us hundreds of billions of dollars. It's going to separate people that are here doing work, paying billions of dollars in taxes every year, that are like supporting our economy. If you were to attempt to start removing those people, you are going to see a shit show unseen before. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea.
Deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies.
Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking
Kamala
and drug
will be
interventions.
much harder than the border
Look,
than I think
we
most
all
people,
wanna solve
even on
this.
the left, will know.
Most of us want to solve this. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no.
Yeah.
Told them to vote against.
That was another good part right there. Because real conservatives are upset about that. Like traditional conservatives are not happy that Donald Trump got that border bill tossed. If they would have gotten passed, that's like anybody that actually believes the things that they say, anybody that isn't just saying it for political rhetoric, that bill was a Republican's wet dream. Like, it was too tough for me. I thought that it was a little bit overboard. I thought it was actually quite a bit overboard. But I thought that if it did get passed, you could probably do some amending. You could have some, some laws that go into effect to change some of the smaller things. But I do think that the border situation does need to be fixed. I think that I don't think of it as a crisis. I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's insane. I think that there are issues because our system is outdated, as many of our systems are outdated. And I mean, you look at our infrastructure, you look at our border, you look at, things in our economy. A lot of the things in America are outdated and they need to be updated. And the border is one of them. But to be honest with you, that was the chance for conservatives to get pushed through a bill that was more likely to be more strict than any bill they'll see from this point on. That was the conservative wet dream bill. And they lost out on that, and real conservatives are upset about that. So that was great he pointed this out.
But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no. Told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things?
The only thing that she did when she became the
Dude, I wish Walz would have brought up what she did in Central America. That's one thing I think he missed out on here. Bucket says, you could say it was a win for progressives that the bill didn't get passed based on how draconian it was. Yeah, 100% Bucket. Like, that's what I mean, is when I lean more into, like, my progressive values, like, I didn't like that bill. When I lean more towards, like, some of my centrist values and, like, more like of the, like, well, I want to see, for instance, when we have caravans that come across the border, as I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there are times where mass amounts of people are let in because it's too much for the border guards to be able to handle. So I am for increasing border guard, which Joe Biden did. Joe Biden did increase, I think, by like 33% Border Patrol agents and ICE agents. But he wanted to do it for more. And he also wanted to give them technology to scan for fentanyl. We all think that fentanyl is a problem. Whether you're left or you're right, we all agree that fentanyl is an issue, but it's not coming across the Mexico border. It's coming through our ports of entry, you know, in the backs of cars. It's coming across from white people, from people with visas. It's not coming across the border in the backpacks of immigrants. That's not where the vast majority of fentanyl is coming from. This is why this like just drives me nuts. And I don't think that Lankford's bill would have been great for all of these things. I think it would have been over the top. I think you would have seen a cut down on legitimate immigration that like I wouldn't be for. But like I said, if you're a traditional conservative, that was your bill. You wanted that passed so bad, and you'll probably never see the likes of it ever again. Ever. You should have took it while you had
What would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things?
The only thing that she did,
yeah, Tim debates like a Labrador.
Exactly,
devious.
Appointed border
He ain't a
czar,
bulldog.
was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems.
Yeah, I wish that he would have right here said Kamala Harris went to Central America to deal with the root causes of immigration. She went to countries and asked them, what can we do for you to stop this influx of people leaving your country and trying to enter ours? That is the common sense, logical, humane thing to do, is to go to other countries and say, hey, what can we do with trade agreements? Let's do something that benefits you and benefits us. Hey, what can we do to help? You got civil unrest? You want us to, you know, put some troops in your country? What do you need? What do you need that'll make things better for you so that way people stop leaving your country? Because this is the part where people get mad. They're, oh, he's talking about being a globalist. You don't have a choice in this world. You don't get a choice to build a wall around this country and just say, well, we're just going to sit here and do things ourselves. We are a resource-rich country. We're an innovation-rich country. We are a human-rich country, a diversity-rich country. But that does not mean that we do not need the help of other countries. We need allies. We need trade partners. We need friends. You can't sit there on your hands and go, well, whatever happens to the rest of the world, that's on them. That's what Rome did. These fucking people want to keep talking about the fall of Rome. Rome sat on their hands and built walls around themselves and said, we ain't got to worry about what's going on out there. Let's just worry about us. And then some dudes that banded together because they were all having a bad time together came and knocked on the door and said, open up or we'll kick the fucking door in. You got to have partners, and that's what she was doing. She was going to Central American countries and trying to help them solve their problems, which she did. It was something like a reduction rate of something like 50% from those countries coming across our borders. Like, conservatives should be with that. I wish that Tim would have went there. But like you said, he was a Labrador. He's not a big debater.
The appointed border czar was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border.
I think he should have let it rip a little.
This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America.
We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
That's
Governor
where
Walz
he did great.
brought up the
That's
community
where he
of
did
Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in
you know what I liked about Tim Walz? I know that like most people probably didn't like this, but the way he kept snapping around and looking at him, because that means he was on point. Like, he was like, dude, okay, this guy's saying something right now, and I need to pay attention, and I'm going to write that shit down. You know why I like about that style that, like I said, other people probably don't like the visceral effect of seeing him do, oh, he looks weak or whatever the fuck they think. I like that because in so many debates, what you really have is two people that came with prepared points of view. So let's put Gavin Newsom on the stage with Jd Vance right here. What does Gavin Newsom do? He smirks, he laughs, He smiles, and then when it's his turn, he doesn't address more than a couple seconds of what Jd Vance says. He might say something along the lines of, well, let me say something about what Jd Vance just said. And then he says something for a couple seconds. And then they launch into a diatribe that was pre-prepared. I really like that Tim Walz kept snapping around because that told me, oh, dude just said something. And then he'd start writing stuff down. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but towards the end of the debate, Tim Walz is at the end of his page. Tim Walz has written down so many notes on what Jd Vance is saying that he's now writing on the bottom of the paper. When we're talking about a person that's going to potentially run the country, as a person that's a leader, as a person that hires people, as a person that manages people and has done so for 20 years, I can tell you right now, that's the person I want to hire. I want to hire the person that's fucking looking at the other guy and being like, okay, keep going. What are you saying? Cool. All right. Writing it down. I'm going to respond to that. Thank you. Okay, cool. Whatever. That's what you're saying? Good. That is what I liked about what Tim Walz did. I thought even though it looks very amateur to certain people, to me, it spoke of a person that wanted to win the debate. It spoke to me of a person that wanted to actually do well, that didn't want to gaslight people, didn't want to lie to people. He just wanted to address whatever claims Jd Vance was making, and that's where I thought he did really, really well.
And he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed.
He did turn red a little bit too often.
You've got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield.
So I looked up, now mind you, he might not be talking about purchasing homes when he says that, so I'll give him that little bit of grace for that. But I looked up how many undocumented immigrants own homes in America, and it's something like 3 million out of the 140 million homes. I continue to push this point, and I think a lot of my subscribers agree with me. The real problem in America with housing isn't immigrants. The real problem, and we should all agree on this, because the people on the right, supposedly the people in the MAGA crowd hate BlackRock, right? It's big corporations like MAGA. Big corporations like BlackRock buying up homes en masse, and it's also people buying homes and then turning them into Airbnbs, which is a incredibly profitable thing to do. I'll be honest with you. I'm not, knocking people for making a little bit of money. I think we should start at the top with these big corporations that are buying up these homes for pennies on the dollar, just like they buy up your debt. It's the same shit. They just find the best, most advantaged way to do it, and then they pull their resources together, trillions of dollars versus people with like almost no money but to put down on their down payment. Those are the problem. We start with those people, then we work our way down to creating laws that both work to help people make money off of things like Airbnbs, but it should be a lot like liquor license. You shouldn't have nothing but Airbnbs. There should be a set amount of homes within a community that can be Airbnbs. And when one person closes their Airbnb, there should be a bidding process. So that way, the county makes some money, they can improve some infrastructure. And yet, at the same time, there's still affordable housing for people that are trying to live there and work there that isn't dominated by Airbnbs everywhere. The lowest on the list is migrants. That's way down on the list. And if you can build 3 million more homes or 5 million more homes, by the way, Biden already started the process with the PRO program. You don't believe me? Go look that shit up. They've already been giving funding to these small counties that have issues with these things to help with permitting processes, to help with building houses. Like, that's what we should be doing. Not just selling fear, not selling hatred, not getting people mad because they're eating your geese. No, we should be talking about this in a sensical manner. And once again, I think Tim Walz actually did a really good job of that. I think that he spoke to it well.
For scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim.
Oh, 100%.
And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
I don't talk about my faith a lot, But Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans.
Dude, look at him nod.
They simply
I love that
want
shit.
order to it.
Got
This
him to
bill
nod.
does it.
That's the
it's
best.
funded. It's supported by the people who do it, and it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large
This
number
part.
of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Margaret,
Nora?
but
Thank you. Senator, we have so much to get to.
Margaret,
Thank you,
I think it's
Nora.
important.
The economy, thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys
economy,
weren't going to
we're-
fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris
not how-
open border wand. That is not.
And see, this is the gaslighting portion. Yes, that app exists. I believe it was, who's the fucking guy that they all hate? It's not they all hate Mayorkas too, right? Is it Mayorkas? No, it was the other guy. God damn it! Why am I drawing a blank on his name? But anyways, he's the one who pushed it through, right? And that app is meant for them to set up appointments. Set up appointments, guys. And this is why he's gaslighting people with this shit. They want you to believe that these immigrants are getting onto an app and hitting agree, like it's a terms of service, and then they're walking across the border. And there's a lot of people out there that are like, that's exactly what's happening. Because they're dullards. They're not very smart people. They don't understand that there's really nothing that works like that. There is an app. It does allow immigrants to get onto said app and create appointments, and it does make the process more efficient. But if you think creating a process to get people through the border, adjudicated, and turned into citizens, and making that more efficient is a bad thing, you're a moron and you're hateful. You don't like brown people. Sorry, dog, but that's what that means. Because at the end of the day, if you want people to come into our country to do good things, be law-abiding citizens, then you have to create paths that are workable. You can't say to somebody, I think it's 10 to 12 years is the current going rate for how long it takes for a person to become a citizen of the United States. We need that shit to be cut down. Tim Walz brought up that it could be, some of these cases by adding more justices, clearing backlogs, which is all part of the Senator Langford bill. It would take 90 days. Currently, it takes somewhere in the area of 5 to 6 years. That's stupid, and it sounds just like the DMV process. After they get done with the border, I'd love for them to work on the fucking DMV. Guess what the DMV did? They created an app that you can set up an appointment. Fucking crazy, right?
P1 app, where you can go on as an illegal
It might have
migrant,
been Merrick
apply
Garland.
for asylum or apply for parole,
Oh, yeah, no.
and be granted
Yeah, isn't
legal
Merrick
status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border
This is
wand.
just gaslighting.
That is
This is
not a
bullshit.
person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation
I think it was
of illegal
Mayorkas.
immigration, Margaret, by
Thank
our
you,
own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal process.
Kamala-
We
and
have
Kamala
so much
Harris
to get
opened up
to,
that
Senator.
pathway.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much.
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we
CBP
want to have.
One app has not been on the books since
Yeah, apps are new. Apps have been around for about 20
Gentlemen,
years. It wasn't in the 90s.
The audience
yeah.
can't hear you because your mics are cut.
What's happening, Jeannie?
I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young
They
women
didn't play the
who
good
had
part,
unplanned
Devious.
pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. One of them is actually very dear to me. She felt like if she hadn't had that abortion,
So this is the most gaslighting bullshit that he did the whole time. Because he literally sat here and was like, I'm for women's rights. Yeah, I don't want women to die from all this stuff. And then obviously behind the scenes in phone calls, he's talking about that people should be punished for crossing state lines. That people should be, tracked. He's the guy who, I wish Tim Walz would have also said this. He should have pointed out that he literally wrote the foreword for one of the Heritage Foundation founders or one of their main people's books. Like Jd Vance is sitting up here just lying to motherfuckers, and I wish Tim Walz would have called him out on that. because this is the biggest gaslighting he did the whole goddamn night. And he did a lot of gaslighting, but this is the biggest. Women, I care for you. I want you to have rights. It's just, you know what? You guys don't make real good decisions. And so me, Jd Vance, you should let me decide what you're going to decide. That's pretty much what he said. Some gaslighting bullshit.
That it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust
that's
back
what I'm saying.
On this
but
issue.
We're not
they
going
frankly
to.
just don't
that's
trust us.
What
and
he's
I think
not
that's
saying.
one of the things
but
that
we're
Donald
not
Trump
going
and
to.
I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise them.
And see, like, all of that stuff, I actually do believe Jd Vance believes. And this is why I think this is important. This is why you got to play a higher level of game with Jd Vance than you do Donald Trump. Donald Trump's going to say some dumb shit, and you're going to just be like, look, it's dumb. Look how fucking dumb this guy is. Jd Vance is going to play a different game. Jd Vance is going to say, I'm pro-family. Sure, Jd Vance is pro-family. He's going to say, I'm pro-IVF. I bet he is pro-IVF. He's going to say, I want to make it so that way families can get into homes easier. I bet he still is pro that as well. But what Jd Vance isn't saying is that I think that you should be forced to have children whether or not you think it's a good idea or not, whether or not you're in a position financially to have that child, whether or not you think that you should be able to take a plan B after you've had sex to make sure that you do not have a pregnancy that you don't want. That's the things he's not saying. And like I said, people on the left have to be careful. You can't underestimate people like Jd Vance. You can't just, is he weird? Fuck yeah, he's weird. But he's a lot smarter than Donald Trump is. And the shit he's saying right now, he can go, look, I voted for pro-family stuff. But then he's also going to say shit like old people should be taking care of their grandkids. Well, what about people that don't have grandparents? Well, what about people that the grandparents still work because they never got a leg up? They're still working their ass off at 75, 80 years old. What about those? Oh, well, too bad for them? That's what we need to point out with somebody like Jd Vance. You got to up your game when you're dealing with a dude like this. Tim Walz actually did a pretty good job of doing that, too.
Just pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms
there you go.
to
Jeannie
afford to
just
have
said
babies.
It.
I want to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front
Pointing out
just
the
to
HIPAA.
give women more options.
When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Exactly.
I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort?
He did great with this.
Is that what we have to go when we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills? They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. So. Christ have mercy. It is awful. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis.
That's where JD's kind of weird. Like, the way he said that was so monotone. Like, I don't know, like, I'm me, like, you know, you guys can always see my emotions. My wife says it all the time. I just wear that shit right on my sleeve, right? Like, I would have turned around and went, damn, what? No shit. Like, I'd be terrible as a politician. Because I'd be like, are you joking me? Did anybody get shot? Was it Crips? Fucking Crips. But JD just looked over and he was like, I am so sorry. He didn't even say it with that emotion. He was like, I'm so sorry that your son saw that. That is Jesus Christ. That was like Dave Chappelle white guy voice right there. Like, that was a Dave Chappelle white guy voice moment. Oh, Jesus Christ, Tim. That's terrible. That was some bullshit right there. Oh.
And I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is
Christ
awful.
have mercy.
We unfortunately have a
It
mental
was
health
smart
crisis
though,
in this
Don
country
Cron.
that
You're
I really do
right.
think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it.
Just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent.
That was
and
good
I think
too.
What we end up doing
and look,
is we
you got
start
him to
looking
nod.
for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is
got
the
him
guns.
to nod again.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to...
And people in the chat got this more correct than I did. So I'm a believer that, look, do I think that the things that happened during the 70s and 80s in our government were not good? Like what happened to Iran with the nationalizing of their oil and us, going over there and meddling in their elections. Do I like what America's done in Iraq when Bush was president? No, like those things I don't like, right? But I also recognize that you can change. Like I've been running businesses for a long time. And I look back at where I was in the business that I run now 15 years ago to where I am today, and I recognize that during those times we made mistakes. Like we did things that if we had done them differently could have been better. There were times where there were employees that we had that I wish that we had kept. We could have done better by them, right? Like it's okay to look back in America's history and say, experts make mistakes too, but saying something like we're just going to completely disown anything that the experts have done, America as a whole, you might not love our history. Some of it may be embarrassing or shameful, but you can't deny that America is the #1 economy in the world. We have an incredibly high GDP. We handled a global pandemic better than any country in the world. We are resource rich. We are diversity rich. You can't look at America, what it is today, and say that everything that those experts believed was incorrect. Look, Americans as a whole wanted cheaper products. Do you think you get those cheaper products by making them here in America? Not if you want Americans to be paid well. You want those dock workers to get the 75% increase in pay that they want rather than the 50%? Then the price of goods is going to go up. If you want McDonald's workers in California to make $20 an hour, then the price goes up. Not as much as they want you to believe. Not as much as they want you to believe. But the price goes up. Americans as a whole wanted cheap-ass Chinese bullshit because back then you didn't know lead in your paint was going to fuck you up. Back then you didn't know that the stuff that you were getting was because little Chinese children were sewing together your Nikes. Now you're going, oh, it looks like we made some mistakes. Were some of those experts assholes? Yeah. But the chat got it more right than I did, okay? I just want to say that to my chatters last night. They got it more right than I did. We want cheap shit. That's what people want, and it's farcical to sit here and act like Americans. I keep saying this about all the MAGA people that are talking about how they're, like all of a sudden we care that there's chemical in our food. I'm like, yeah, wait until you find out how much organic food costs. You think your eggs are expensive now? Just wait until that fucking chicken had a name, okay? Wait until you find out that chicken gets massaged daily. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. See, I did it too. You guys, 10 years from now, I'm going to be running for office, and somebody's going to be like, you said that they massage chickens, and it says here, the New York Times says that they don't massage chickens. Or didn't back then. Like, yeah, that's what I fucking said, because it was a joke. They do have
I think
names,
it's a big
though.
piece of it.
Just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts
Yes, we were,
for 40
Devious.
years said that if we
Yes,
shipped
we
our
were.
manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They
And that's
said if we
literally a
shipped our industrial
conservative
base
thing.
off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger.
Conservatives
They were
wanted
wrong
that
about
shit.
They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore.
Except he didn't. Except he didn't. All he did was increase tariffs on Americans. He bankrupted our farmers. Like, this is the problem with Donald Trump that people don't get. He has ideas, but they're concepts of ideas. He literally told you that shit. He doesn't mean that he's ever sat down and been like, oh, okay, let's think about the economic structure of America and how this will impact it. What if we start charging tariffs on these goods? Who does it benefit and who does it hurt? No. Donald Trump had somebody around him that was like, what about tariffs? And he's like, tariffs are good. That's a great idea. I came up with it. The guy who came up with it was like, hey, actually, I didn't. He's like, have that man shot. Can he fall down a set of stairs, push him out a window? Putin says we can do that. At the end of the day, Donald Trump, the biggest problem with Donald Trump, look, you can point out that Donald Trump abuses women. That's bad. You can point out that Donald Trump is a convicted felon. That's bad. You can point out that Donald Trump tried to commit treason and overturn a legitimate election. That's really, really, really bad. But if you want to just talk about whether or not Donald Trump was a good president or not, no, he wasn't. Because he didn't know what the fuck he was doing. This is why when people said, oh, we need somebody that's like us in office. No, you don't. Have you ever worked in a business? Have you ever been in a business and like one of the people that works with you that sits out there and smokes cigarettes on break with you? Have you ever looked at that motherfucker and been like, he should be in charge of Walmart? Have you ever been standing next to the fry cook at McDonald's and been like, damn, if this dude ran this place, we would be doing so much better? Because if you did, you were wrong. And that's what Donald Trump proved. You gotta have some experience. You don't want fucking Jimbo that you know that talks good to be your lawyer. Look, I sit up here and talk for 3 hours at a time. The last thing you want is me defending you in a criminal trial. That would be a bad idea. You want like fucking one of those dudes that was fucking doing the OJ case. That's who you want. Are those people good people? No. Do they lie a lot? Probably. But you don't want a ginger fucking defending you if you absolutely, definitely, 100% killed your wife, OJ. And you don't want a failed businessman running the country because he has concepts of plans. He doesn't have plans. He doesn't know how the economy works. He doesn't know how tariffs work. He doesn't know how foreign trade works. He's never done anything at all, ever, in his life that qualified him to be the president of the United States of America. That's why he was bad. All those other things he did just make him a shitty human being. That just makes him a terrible fucking person. What made him a bad president is he didn't know how to do the goddamn job. And he'd sell the country to Vladimir Putin if he could fucking benefit from it. That was my rant. That was my rant for the day. I don't even know what they're talking about anymore.
The wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore.
Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
that's a gross generalization.
that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing...
That is a gross generalization. Donald Trump doesn't listen to the experts. This is sane washing. This is expertise washing. Donald Trump never, ever listens to anybody but his sycophants. And you know who aren't sycophants? People that know shit. Because I can tell you, as a person that's been in leadership for a very long time, when you approach somebody like let's say upper management, right? Let's say I'm middle management and I'm dealing with somebody in upper management. and you recognize that they don't know something, you recognize they have a shortcoming, and you go, hey, in the most gentle of terms, I just want to let you know that that thing you're doing is actually going to cause us a net negative. So if I were you, I wouldn't do that. I'd do this other thing. Donald Trump doesn't take well to that. If that upper management person looked at me and was like, I'm not listening to you. You don't suck my little tiny mushroom nearly enough for me to listen to you, then you stop going to that person. You stop telling them the things that you want. You get at worst, you're one of these middle management people that just get frustrated over and over again until you fucking quit. Donald Trump has never listened to an expert. I guarantee you, before his debate, where he was on that plane with Laura Loomer and supposedly Tulsi Gabbard was probably sitting there going, hey, I've debated Kamala Harris. Hey, yeah, did I lie and gaslight people about her prosecutorial record? Goddamn right I did. And you should too. She was probably literally saying, dude, I've done this. I won in the eyes of the people because they're morons. They'll just believe whatever you say. Sir, just tell them that she was a terrible prosecutor. And he looked right over at Laura Loomer and he's like, she sucks my mushroom. And she said that on X, they talk about them eating the dogs. And then he went on that goddamn debate stage and he stood up there in front of everybody and he was like, they're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the pets. Because he doesn't listen to experts. He listens to sycophants. That's why nothing that he said after that beginning statement of, oh, well, thank you for that, is correct. Jd Vance wants you to believe that Donald Trump is much better at his job than Donald Trump is. And Jd Vance, sadly enough, would be better at the job than Donald Trump because at least he knows what the fuck he has to hide about Donald Trump from people. Oh, my God. I've had one day to think about this.
Honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which, of course, he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which, of course, he did. And then you've simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens.
That was another part. So I know, like, dude, it's exhausting. I can say this from experience. It's exhausting to argue with people about this stuff. So no knock on Tim Walz. I thought Tim Walz, from a self-professed not good debater, did a really good job. I was very impressed by it. I don't know that he brought any swing voters over, but I think if you're like a morally good human being and you saw that debate performance by Tim Walz, I think that you did decide to vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.